everyone, to the first in a series of Resilience Exchange for the Vermont Tourism Summit. The board of directors decided a while ago that it would be great if we could somehow offer education to the folks that come to our meetings on a regular basis. And so thank you to the sponsorship by the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing. We've got the first in that series this week, and it's a lodging panel. My name is Cindy Delaney. I'm the executive director of the Vermont Tourism Summit and owner of Delaney Meeting and Event Management. And I would like to welcome all of you for being here today. Just a couple quick housekeeping notes on Zoom protocol. If you could turn your cameras off if you're not speaking. I mean, I want the panel to stay with their cameras on, but cameras off and microphones off until the end. When we wrap up the panel, we're going to open it up to networking. So you're welcome to, once we wrap that up, turn back on your camera and your microphone and chat with everyone. You're also welcome to use the chat throughout. If you've got a question specific to the panel, make a note of that just so we know to pull it out of that massive chat messages and make sure we have time for that at the end. For those of you that don't know already, we have set a date of December 7th to the 9th for the Vermont Tourism Summit at Killington in person right now. Chances are probably pretty high that we'll offer a hybrid model as well, so can open up that to a broader audience. Just aren't quite sure what that's going to look like, but save the date for now for December 7th to the 9th. Again, a special thanks to Heather Pelham at the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing for sponsoring the event. And I'm going to kick things off. Heather's going to say a few words once I introduce Sarah Morris, who is our moderator for the day. For those of you that don't know, Sarah is a fifth generation hotelier at Basin Harbor, a summer seasonal resort on Lake Champlain. She helps anticipate, fulfill, and exceed guest expectation, guiding guests from pre-arrival to on-campus fun. Sarah is also active across the state to help Basin Harbor stay connected to the amazing people and businesses of Vermont. Welcome, Sarah, and the rest of our panelists. It's all you.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. And welcome, everyone. I think equally exciting for us is that we've got over 100 people that have signed up for this series today. So looking forward to it being interactive, and we will be monitoring the chat. So please do use that feature. Pleased to introduce Heather Pelham, who's the commissioner with the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing. And would love to open it up, Heather, if you have anything you'd like to say to the group on how things are going or different resources that people may not be aware of that you'd love for them to plug into and just how they can stay connected with what's going on at the state level.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon to everybody. I know that there is a great panel here, so I won't take too much time. To your point, Sarah, in terms of the types of assistance that is available to the industry, I would direct folks, if you haven't already been plugged into the Resource Recovery Center on the ACCD website. That's the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. You know, we try to make sure that we have all of the latest information there in terms of the federal programs that are available, PPP, EIDL, and so forth, shuttered venues. We did send out an industry newsletter yesterday with some of those links. So if anyone's not on that list, I would also just put a plug to say, make sure you sign up so we can stay in communication with you. We are also working with the legislature right now in terms of, you know, what steps can we take and what resources can we have available to help the industry as we go through the next, you know, years and months. And that includes a proposal for a long-term funding plan, which I know is something that many in the industry have worked many years to achieve. We're going to take another run at it. And that, you know, the initial proposal does include an additional investment of $1 million for tourism and marketing, as well as $1 million in consumer stimulus and some other historic investments in outdoor recreation. So there are some exciting things in play at the legislature, and I'd be happy to follow up on that. But knowing that there's a great panel ahead, I just wanted to take the time to thank everyone for being here today, to thank the Vermont Tourism Board for creating this new resiliency series. And just as I was thinking about it, you know, resiliency may seem like a buzzword these days as much as pivot has become in the last year. But really to sustain the recovery that we're all working to craft, it will require a focus on those efforts that will make the industry more resilient in the long term, in recognition that this new normal and, you know, some of the operational changes and shifts in consumer preferences that we've seen, may be here for some time. So it will be to the benefit of all if we learn how to embrace them. So I am excited to do just that, to learn more, and I will turn it over to this great panel. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Heather. And for those of you who don't know our panelists, let me introduce them to you. We have Laura Conti from the Mountaintop Inn. She is the Director of Marketing there and has extensive history in marketing and experience there. I love it when I read people's bios, you find out more than you knew about them before. Laura has owned and operated her own pub. She's been involved with Club Med, which we're going to have a cocktail and talk about, as well as extensive worldwide marketing. So thrilled to have you here. Thank you. Joe Carton, if you don't know him, is the Chief Operating Officer at Westport Hospitality. He oversees Hotel Vermont, the Marriott Courtyard, and the Town Suite in Williston. Town Place Suites, excuse me. And Joe has extensive experience, general manager at the Marriott. He was involved in what was the Wyndham property that is now the Burlington Hilton, and then extensive experience as well in the ski industry at Smug, Stowe, and Stratton, is it?
Stratton, yes.
Yeah, great. So it's been all over the state. And then we have Courtney Lowe joining us as well from the Woodstock Inn. Courtney is the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development. And Courtney has extensive experience in the Woodstock area, formerly at the Equinox Inn. And I'm not going to list how long everyone's been in the industry because it's been a bit, but we have a great panel of experts here. And to the extent that we can, we're going to keep this conversational, and we'll also be, as I said, again, monitoring the chat to bring in input from the folks that are watching as well, and or if they're asking for any additional information on topics that we're covering. So it's been a hell of a year. I don't think that that's a surprise to anyone. In an effort not to spend too much time licking our wounds in this hour together, we're really going to try to highlight the silver lining and talk through the aha moments of 2020 and what we're bringing into 2021 from lessons learned in order to have a more successful year ahead. So let's kick off with some initial ideas on positive changes that you've seen in the last year. Who would like to start?
I'll kick it off. Oh, sorry, Laura.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, in Burlington, we're not that we have any answers at all, quite frankly, but we've tried a lot of things. And we have 3 hotels that are very different. One's an extended stay, one is a high-end boutique, and the other is more of a corporate hotel. So what works for one doesn't always work for others, but we've had great success in the extended stay market with the nurses, essential travel, really turning that on. It's very rate sensitive, however, but the occupancy's been good. The Hotel Vermont, we've been fortunate that we have outdoor venue. We went to outdoor dining, and we feel 2021 will be the whole summer of fire pits and outdoor pizza ovens, all socially distanced. But we want to activate those. And a couple of years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, we built an outdoor pizza oven. Didn't really know what we were going to do with it. We had several false starts, and all of a sudden it became kind of our focal point last summer that we'd have 70, 80, 90 people there for a period of time. So as long as the weather's good, that turned out to be pretty reasonable. And the real hard part is the corporate travel in the Courtyard in the Marriott, and that has just disappeared. So as we try to look at how we can activate that hotel more, we've got to turn more to leisure and focus similar to things that we do at Hotel Vermont to keep people excited and coming through that property. So there's a lot of balls in the air with it.
Right. Great, Laura.
Mirror everything Joe just said about outdoor dining, especially. But I wasn't even going to talk about Mountaintop so much. But for those that don't know, Mountaintop Resort is not far from Killington. We are a privately owned hotel, and we are very, very focused on the destination wedding business. So this past year has been just really horrible for us, not being able to pull off those events and moving them all into 2021. And we'll get to that topic later on. But I was going to say one of the greatest positives I've seen out of this past year is the start of the Vermont Lodging Association. We never really, or we didn't have, there was the Vermont Inns and Beds and Breakfasts, and but now there's a concerted effort to put together a group. If you haven't heard about it, you should definitely look into it if you're in the industry. And they're actually seeking members right now. It's very affordable, and they have a direct line to the state in terms of not just moving forward and budgeting for tourism dollars, but also just right now getting through COVID and lobbying for information so that we know what our guidelines might be this summer. It's actually not having had that voice as an industry before was very detrimental, and I just think it's one of the greatest things that's come out of this situation, horrible situation that it is. But I just wanted to bring that one up.
Great, thank you. Courtney, how about for you?
Yeah, I want to echo first what Laura said about the Vermont Lodging Association, and I've never spent this much time with industry partners, and it's been amazing. I mean, we've been able to share so much. I mean, not just what's involved with going on in this era of COVID, but other things and beyond. So, and we've gotten a lot closer too. So I think we'll be a better industry and be a better competitor as a Vermont brand as we move forward. So I'm looking forward to that. I found that, just in general, our model of our business and what we all run, everything, I think probably a lot of us learned of how flexible we can be. And I was pretty amazed when, you thought you ran a pretty tight and efficient ship, and then you have to, when you really forced to dig in, there were so many opportunities that have arisen, and everything from your purchasing audit and trying to find better ways to do that. I know one of the questions later is about vendors, but they played a role in that. Dual responsibilities of positions and how those play. I mean, those are really positive. I think Vermont in general saw a demographic change, and regardless of how they had to travel here in one way or another, we saw a younger generation taking full advantage of Vermont. And I'm not talking about a 20-something crowd or anything. I'm really talking about that 35 to 45-year-old, young couples just married, or young families. People traveling that wouldn't normally come here, especially in the fall time, which is usually an older generation for Vermont. And I think that was a positive change.
Yeah, we saw that as well. And it was sort of a culmination of trends that have been happening where people are not only working from home because they have to, but they're working while they're on vacation. We had people specifically that said, we're coming Sunday through Thursday. Johnny needs to plug in to get online for his classes on Tuesday, but otherwise we are on vacation and we're able to travel because things have gone remote in that way.
Yeah.
So we also saw people taking advantage of a travel time that might not have been accessible to them with their schedules for that. Well, I'll move on to our next question. We're all in business to make money. So are there any ahas of, oh, I was not expecting that to carry us as much as it did, or we normally wouldn't pay attention to this, or we shifted our operation in order to realize better revenues in this area? Laura, I know you had it. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Well, it's interesting. Just this weekend is one of those, a week ago, I think at Hotel Vermont, we had 40 rooms sold, and maybe double that at the Courtyard. And we've been running very limited food and beverage operations as a result of, 50% mandate and not much opportunity. So all of a sudden now we're almost totally sold out at each of these locations. And there's very limited food service in the city of Burlington because most restaurants are closed. So we're in a bit of a panic mode. Say, how are we going to feed these people? So you become a lot more creative and hopefully folks will understand, but you've just got to think totally different, that something that seems so simple a year ago, all of a sudden becomes a major discussion point. How are you going to feed folks?
Right.
Want me to jump in, Laura?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Yeah, one of the things that, one of the things actually happened, I'm gonna point it out, is, I'm not sure where this lands in this, but, I think, Joe, I was reading your notes, you were talking about, rate. And, one thing we realized, people want to travel here. They don't care what they're paying right now. They just want to get here and go somewhere. So, we found that, holding on our rate in October really worked well for us. And I was actually amazed with a much smaller occupancy that I had, which was significantly, is probably about 30 to 35% down in October than what we know. It's our biggest month of the year for us, and yet we made 85% of the room revenue on that month of 2019. That made me show when you know demand's not huge and you hold on to your value, that made a big difference. We also found that our spa did well, and that was really hard to manage. I thought we were never going to be able to open a spa, and we did, and iSpas was tremendous in helping spas across the country open safely and done right, and we've done extremely well there, and you almost feel like you're part of you're taking care of people's psyche in this environment. So people that are traveling here, that's a part of their therapy, right? And so glad we were able to open that. And then we never had a lot of outdoor dining, and that was huge for us. We now are ready to open up our outside dining a lot more, and we're already buying stuff for next year. So.
Laura, you had in our pre-call, you had made an example of ski lessons, and I don't know if you want to chat about that here.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to chime in and say, well, two things. I know the question was more about, initiatives that were making more money than you expected. But similarly, initiatives that you already have that you think you're so used to it, you're so close to it, you don't think much of it. But on one of the calls we had recently, we were talking about how with the restrictions on restaurants and closing so early and limited seating, and not being able to, socialize, if someone does come to visit, what is it that they're going to do in the evening? And so we were trying to come up with all of these, crazy ideas and programs that we'd have to put a lot of extra effort into and staff into. And we just boil it down to, even just reminding people, if you have jacuzzi tubs, or, if you can do a delivery of a bottle of wine and glasses and you have a jacuzzi tub in your rooms, that's a vacation for people. That's something that they're looking for. But it's things that we're so used to just servicing and having that we forget that that's actually a bonus. So just was going to suggest to everybody to kind of pull from your core, pull from the things that are natural to your business, and remember to remind people that they're there. But Sarah brings up a good point. We have cross-country ski area at Mountaintop, and across the board, I think the industry, I'm not sure about downhill, but cross-country in general has definitely seen that having reduced the number of guests in a lesson. So we used to do group lessons, which were less expensive than a private lesson, and we just switched it straight to private lessons. It's a better experience for the guests. They're getting that one-on-one tutorial. And it's a better experience for the teacher, the instructor. And it's actually more value for us because you are charging more for it. So again, things like that. If you have things that you generally did as a group and you're reducing them down to a private level, it tends to be a better experience for everyone involved and could be more lucrative. So just two thoughts there in terms of maneuvering the situation.
Yeah, Laura, I'll piggyback on that, because I agree with that, because we both, we have our own alpine ski area and Nordic, and same thing, and our outdoor activity center, the individual and couples doing lessons and paying for those and stuff, it has worked so much better for us. I mean, that's been a huge win for sure.
Yeah, we're finding too, our premium rooms are the first to sell now, whereas in the past that hadn't always been the case.
Yeah.
People are definitely looking for ways to treat themselves. And my addition to this topic would be our dining out. So we typically cater to our guest population that's at the resort, and we saw huge interest in our restaurants. People were just sick of cooking at home and desperately wanted to be taken care of. And I think that we're all looking for those opportunities, whether it's a single household right now or the opportunity to open up more and go out and dine with friends. But things taste better when you didn't cook them yourself. So even when people had their own resources, their own kitchens at home, they really wanted to come out, and we saw a jump in our dining as a result of that. So great. Anyone have any ideas of things that you changed for 2020 that you had to change that you're actually excited to be keeping for 2021 that have either changed how you're looking at the operation, or that you're thankful that you get to carry forward and you're looking to expand upon in the year ahead?
I'll hop in that one. I think I've heard across the board for our industry, a revolution in housekeeping. That's what this has been. It was a necessity at the get-go to change our way of housekeeping because of the virus. And interestingly enough, and not every property is the same, but guests aren't always complaining about it. Some are. I mean, if you're not giving overnight housekeeping for every day of the stay, guests are quite happy just to change out their towels, get rid of their trash, do things that are less contact, and not having someone in their room. And if you think about it, and look at your numbers, speak to your housekeeping team. If your guests were already prone to put that little "do not disturb" sign on their room the moment they checked in, and really not expect housekeeping for a day or two before they left, then that seems to be a trend that a lot of resorts are going to stick with, is having overnight housekeeping be a request. So for longer stays, 3 and more, definitely installing housekeeping, making sure that by that third day, someone has gotten in there to make sure the room isn't a wreck, especially with all the takeout that everyone's getting now in rooms. Definitely alleviate some of that exposure there. But I would say across the board, every resort I've spoken to, housekeeping, it's a savings in terms of staff. It's always been a difficult area to staff. It just seems like that is something that might stick moving forward in terms of not necessarily freely offering it every day. Having it there, I've even heard of some resorts that are charging for it. One was charging in New England, was charging $25 if you wanted daily housekeeping service, which is interesting. But most resorts have it built in, and the customer knows that. So, but that's just the one observation from us.
Yeah, one thing we're trying to do with significant less employees is cross-train a lot more, because it's so much more valuable if you can do 2 or 3 or 4 things, and maybe pay a premium to that one employee that does master several different skill sets, where you used to have 2 people or 3 people to do now what one person might be able to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think I mentioned that earlier too. The dual responsibilities is a huge change. The interesting thing about the housekeeping, Laura, and those that are on the call that have brands that they deal with, sometimes your brand guidelines say that you have to do housekeeping every day and all of that. And it's going to be interesting talking back with the brands. I don't know about Marriott, Joe, but in discussing with them about a shift in that guideline model too, because what I found talking to a lot of people is they've told me, yeah, a lot of times when I check in, I put that "do not disturb" on, and I leave it on the whole time because I don't want anybody going in my room. And that was pre-COVID time. So, right. So I think asking people, making sure it's available to them is important, and that works. Yeah, as far as keeping things around for us, is the increased dining I already mentioned. I mean, definitely that's going to be in the takeout model for us, Joe. I saw in your notes maybe it didn't work as well, but takeout, we've never really did much takeout, and it's actually been it was done really well. Now, again, I have to caution ourselves on that because it could be overwhelmed by those that just can't dine out as much right now, and they're taking advantage of it. For sure, but we've gotten efficient at it, which is good, and we've learned how to do it. So I think even upon request, we'll be much better at it than we have been in the past, because we never really promoted it.
Yeah, one of the challenges we found, we got into it, we did it, and I think we did it reasonably well, but being more of an urban setting, there's just people who do this all the time.
Yeah.
And they were just much better, much more efficient. And so we felt we were competing, we couldn't compete on our rate, if you will, from what some of the local delivery services could do.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about Marriott, we found that the brands have been actually pretty flexible through this. They've been able to, bend the rules and do what you've got to do to keep the business going. And so I think a lot of things will open up from a brand perspective, and probably as they audit and things like that, some of the brand standards may loosen up.
We did find a lot of people got upset with us though on that housekeeping bit when we were saying we weren't going in there for a while before we allowed, they could request it. That increased as people got more into the COVID world. At first, they were totally fine with it.
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, you're not charging me any less, so I want my housekeeping.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Courtney, you brought up the to go, and to go has obviously been, phenomenal, or phenomenal in terms of volume. We've always offered, because we have guest houses, we've always offered a stock your fridge service. And even for the holidays, Thanksgiving dinner, to go, delivering an entire turkey and a family style meal to the houses was popular. But we always offered a stock your fridge service. But now with this current COVID situation and quarantine and guests being asked not to stop anywhere en route to the resort, we found that that's become much more popular. And even not for the whole stay, but if they're staying with us for 4 or 5 days, it might be on Wednesday, could you make sure we have breakfast and items, and we would deliver eggs and milk and bread or we would make it for them and it would be takeout, but giving them that option. And I would imagine it would work in an efficiency lodge room as well. Being able to stock that fridge before the guest comes, with water, soda, even, Cabot cheese, snacks and things. I mean, I would imagine things like that. If you had a little package, that would probably sell really well, so that they just don't have to go to the corner store, and just making life easy for them. And once they get there, they can just relax. So just a thought there.
Yeah, technology is another thing that we've been able to utilize more. Communication through to the housekeeping and front desk area, as well as maintenance. Just been able to communicate more effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, I think all of this sped up the technology that you always wanted to put in place, and you didn't know how to put it in place. So you force yourself to get there. And same with us, we've got the app, the check-in app with the key. We had the electronic key system, so now you can take your phone, use your phone as your key, and we've got a texting service which is done really well, which is folding into now our survey model. And so the technology has been put into place. I mean, obviously that's going to stick around because we always want it, but it sped it up. So that's another positive.
That and Zoom. I mean, highly recommend using Zoom for orientations and things if you can't, as a part of your staff meetings and team meetings, and it's very, very helpful, especially when you're onboarding people.
And also hybrid meetings too. That's something everybody should be looking at right now. If you're not, is really how are you going to manage through this year with those that don't want to travel, can't travel still with some of our restrictions, and then those that can actually be here in person, and making sure that you either have the technology or the partnership with an AV company that can do it, or hoping that some of your clients can bring that with them as well. So an investment in that is definitely something to take a good look at. Even weddings, doing weddings, doing the actual ceremony for those who can't get here.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually Zoomed with my nephews, and he got married in Philadelphia this summer. So if we had the whole family on Zoom, couldn't go, but it was great.
One of the things at Basin Harbor, we communicated a lot more in advance of guest arrival, as much because we had newer guests that were coming, but also things were evolving on a weekly basis. And so really to be candid and share what we knew, and share where there was an expectation of shared responsibility with the guests to either make dining reservations in advance, or understand that we needed to know, for resource allocation, if no one signed up for that activity, it was going to get canceled 24 hours in advance, whereas before it had been all things for all people. So as much sort of giving ourselves permission to not offer everything, but and being realistic on what was sustainable for our team, but also being very candid with them about when we could actually pick trash up if they left it outside versus if they put it out at 2:30 in the afternoon. We're not going to be able to get there necessarily. So we learned to communicate better with our guests about not only pre-arrival, but experience while they were there. And technology helped with that. So,
That's a good point, which can only build loyalty, hopefully.
Yeah.
hopefully.
You know, you remind me of something, Sarah. It's the, you talk a lot about pushing out the cleanliness and safety model to your guests to make them feel good about coming here. But I don't think that's going away. I think utilizing some sense of that as your brand and making sure people understand that that is something that, our industry is very good at it, but that we've even gotten better at it, and that you're taking care of people when they travel here.
I think the key there as well is, in marketing, we always talk about push and pull communications, and you can't have expected any guest, well, maybe 1% of the guests, to have been able to go through our website or the ACD site or any site and understand what the hell they were supposed to do this whole time. So it was really important that we pushed information out to them and changed it when it changed, because it did change so frequently, but very, very important. Can't support that enough, Sarah. Very, very important topic.
Yeah, over communications key.
I know, particularly in the beginning of last year, we all had to turn in a little bit and focus more on our Vermont audience because other people couldn't get here. So let's talk a little bit about how your relationship with the Vermont customer changed, and either things that you did to attract them or just how you communicated with them differently, and if you saw results.
Yeah, interesting having three very different products. Certainly Hotel Vermont has been more engaged, I think, with the Vermont resident than two of our Marriott branded hotels. That just connects much better, I think, with the consumer. So we've been able to do offers through websites and the databases that we have, and they've been pretty well received. So we've been pleasantly surprised by that. But I haven't had much success, at the Courtyard doing similar type offers. It just doesn't seem to quite resonate with the guest as much.
Yeah, we did not have success with Vermont travelers. We tried several times, and we tried many times in the past too. And it just, for some reason, it's, Vermont in general is not our customer base. And, even with a very good offering out there. I know some colleagues that are on the call that did much better and had some huge success. And it's something I'll keep looking at, see if there's different ways to pull those folks in here. But no, we still had to rely on out-of-state travelers that could quarantine and come here.
Courtney, we're very much the same way. We have had a Vermont staycation promotion out there. We did both an activity-based one. So we did a horse-drawn sleigh ride and lunch version and day ski pass, because we thought a lot of, Vermonters, if they're not willing to spend the night, at least they can get out for the day. And of course, we did a lodge room offer and a house offer. And I meant to get the numbers on that and see which one was performing the best before we get on the call. So I apologize for that. But I will say that one thing we've seen a great influx in is people from the hospitality industry. Right now, we have 2 property owners from Stowe staying with us today at Mountaintop, and 2 different reservations. So, if it's a time for us to all get out and support each other, and I'm sure, sometimes barter is an option, and or trading a great rate. I think it's a really good time for us to also show support to each other in the industry, and see how we're each is handling different things in the COVID world, and experience that. And we're very much all learning in this situation. We're like kids again in a brand new world. So it's good to see what everybody else is doing and get out and visit. I'm happy. Call me. Call me if people are looking to come ski at Mountaintop.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to mention this because both Laura and Sarah have a model that have standalone buildings that people can stay in. And I think as a business, it's something we're really looking hard at because we have 2,400 acres of land and we've got a lot of opportunity with about 35 houses we own to do more standalone. We think the future, I mean, we're already kind of looking at this, but boy, do we wish we had 30 units that we were, you know, renting out, because we have one standalone unit, and that thing, it's not even, we're renovating it little by little now, and it's gotten so much better, but it wasn't great when we started, but it was in demand like crazy. And it will continue to be so. And I think, you know, if there's I think about your company, and if you guys invest in other future stuff, I mean, it's a great model, and a combination of guest rooms and standalone units is a nice combo. So
Yeah, it's, well, Airbnb is, probably doing better than anybody.
yeah.
I'm going to go back to Laura's point just to say that visiting other properties is a huge resource tool to not only refresh when you're traveling, but steal their ideas and
Yeah,
claim them as
doors
your
are
own.
open. We have room. Just call me.
Just don't steal staff. No stealing staff. Steal ideas on
Right.
no staff.
Yeah.
How about have any of you changed your relationship with your vendors? I know that they, you know, we think about our peripheral partners that we are thrilled to be in business with and working with to make our full operation work, but many of them are greatly impacted as a result of our businesses being impacted. So has it brought you closer to any of your vendors, or have you had different conversations in the past year that you hadn't had before that provided opportunity or insight into their operation?
Yeah, that's a real challenge, because certainly things go downhill. You know, the less we order, the more pressure becomes on Ecolab and all the vendors that we do have. Have a specific, Ecolab with our local guy, Marco. He's a great sales rep. And, if you were short of detergent for the laundry, he knew exactly where to get it. He knew who had it. Now it's just not available. His product is not on the shelf. It's reduced dramatically. So you got to keep all those lines open, because the last minute call just won't work anymore. You've got to really be aware of where you can get product and who's got what, because they're not sitting on the shelf anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, I want to support that and say it's not even, if you are an event-based property or a seasonal property, you definitely want to be speaking to those seasonal vendors now. I mean, even the summer for weddings, every wedding that got moved from 2020 into 2021, there are only so many photographers in Vermont.
Right.
There are only so many DJs. And if they're already booked on a Friday, they can't book another wedding. So, think about your events or seasonal activities and staffing as well. And how difficult it might be to do that this year and get ahead of that curve for sure. If you need to rent tents, if you need to have them for outdoor dining, if you hop on that now, obviously. I mean,
No, you're 100% right.
sure everyone's thought of that, but I'm just going to hammer that down.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel for, there's so many small vendors that to help them and get them set up for to keep them surviving now. So there actually are more of them out there would be great. I thought technology was interesting because a lot of the tech firms in our industry, because our industry is hurt, and those tech firms were very narrow and directed into the lodging or the hotel or resort business, or in business for that matter. They shrunk down on their account reps and so forth. The positive side of it was I was getting their top-notch people talking to me. They weren't always readily accessible, but when I got them, I actually got a lot more out of them. So, which is key. So I'm certainly going to take advantage of that in the short term as they rebuild. But at the same time, I also think there's still a lot of good technology out there. You do need to be careful who's going to survive in this world out there too. So don't get yourself contracted with something that looks good now and it's a startup and they may not be around from a few months from now. So be careful with that, and make sure you got somebody's who make sure you're looking into who you're contracting with, that they've got 2 feet on the ground and are going to be able to survive through this next year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that also, I'll just piggyback, we, have been using certain vendors for a long time. And so particularly when talking with peers, I'm sure to mention those and offer referrals and tell the vendor they can use me as a referral. So however we can be a resource, whether it's business or perpetuating business with others. I know that everyone sort of got in the back of their head, it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows this past year. So there are a number of things that we discussed on our planning call for this about what we're still watching for this year and keeping in the forefront of our minds in order to make sure that we're not losing sight of things that are still precarious out there or could present as a challenge in the year ahead. So are there any things that you're keeping an eye on that you would advise others to as well, or maybe the audience has some ideas on what they can do to help us?
Well, I know from our point of view, I'm very concerned about being able to hire enough people back to achieve, the occupancies that we had and the revenues. Certainly, we've talked about doing more with less, but the fact of the matter is, when you are going to run, hopefully, a much higher occupancy in the summer, we've let most of those housekeeping staffs go and servers go. They have all now pretty much either left the state or found new employment or realized that they didn't want to do this anymore and are working in another type of industry. So I'm concerned how we're going to do much more with a smaller core group of people and what that stresses them out, how they deal with that, because they need time off and families, et cetera. So those are real challenges.
Yeah, I have to piggyback on that because Vermont Lodging Association has been talking a lot about that. And I know Heather's on the call. I think when we start revamping a marketing plan for the state brand as well is getting tourists here, I think also maybe consider our promoting the industry as well. And I think the Lodging Association will do that because Hans preaches this all the time, Joe, about the misnomers of the industry and pay rates and so forth. We actually pay pretty well compared to most industries out there. So, and that the career opportunities are so great. I know one thing in our industry, when the market is down in normal recessions, you can almost always find work. We've got structures, we got businesses that have to continue to run.
Right.
So I think that's great. Things that opportunities that take advantage of is definitely that demographic change. We're going right after that. There are so many new customers that fell in love with Vermont, and a lot of it's because of our great outdoors and the activities. And we created a new activity center this year, which I did not bring up earlier, but so we have this great activity center, we do mountain biking cruise. We have cruisers, we have our Orvis fly fishing programs out of there. We did ice fishing this year, which people love. And we actually use it as our concierge center, our activity concierge center now. So they book everything. They actually even book, they book spa appointments, they book meals and everything. And this was brand new to us. I never even knew we'd get that good at a concierge level like that. So and promoting that outdoor activity center was such a driver for us to build on our brand and build on the Vermont brand. We've always have been that great outdoors state, but it means so much more today than it ever has. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, back to Laura's point of promoting what we already had, and it's not necessarily something new, although maybe it's bundled or organized or communicated differently, but absolutely. I know we had a question earlier in the chat about the 14-day quarantine and how we're ensuring that from our guests that are coming. I'm curious if any of you have any comments or advice for the group on your experience with it over the past year and or how you've evolved your operation to incorporate that, guest communications, face-to-face, turning people away, whatever it might be.
Yeah, we've done all of the above. Certainly the toughest ones are when you're over the phone and, the 5-minute reservation now is a 25-minute discussion about health and vaccinations and testing. So we tell people, write out what the rules are, and they've got to sign the compliance form when they come. And but we don't want to be the judge and jury at the same time. So put it out there, and if they sign the forms, they sign the forms.
Yeah, it's impossible to police things, and you shouldn't. You do the best you can. You push everything out. Over communication is good. Verbal and email communication. We did. There are 4 separate lines of communication that you get about that before you even arrive here. And we've always trained our team, as soon as they tell you the thing that they're doing that's not allowed for them to come here, and they verbally tell you, they send you an email, I'm so sorry, that won't work at this point in time, but when you're able to do this and then come back, we welcome you back with open arms. So yeah, it's not been easy. I mean, I'll knock on wood, we've been very lucky. We haven't had any major issues here. I think the hard thing is in this business is you got travelers coming in for a day or 2 in Vermont. That's it. They come and they're gone. Then the next person comes, they come and they're gone. So understanding whether a guest has quarantined or been sick or was sick while they're here is almost next to impossible, because those states really aren't connecting the dots. And it really comes down to your employees. Are your employees getting sick? And that's really what you're going to find out, whether they're getting sick. And obviously, when you listen to the governor, they don't see a whole lot of connection with the tourism industry coming here and doing it. It really comes down to the people that live here and that are here and bring it to them, or go away somewhere and bring something back. That's where the main issues have been. So I think our industry and tourism, we should be very proud. We've safeguarded as best we possibly can to make this work. And I think we've got a model going forward, no matter what we run into, that we can do this well and do it safely and open up our businesses.
Courtney, it's interesting that, we're in the business, we're in the hospitality business. It's meant to be all about high touch and lots of contact and conversation. And here we've had to completely change that and become very, standoffish type, an industry that it can't be as close as we used to be. And I can't agree more about the fact that, yes, we do have to trust the guests when they say that they're quarantining. And even that they'll quarantine when they get back home in their own state, then that's not our problem. But and we have seen a ton of cancellations, a lot of last minute within 2 weeks, and then a lot of cancellation. I mean, it's just been a merry-go-round of bookings and cancellations. But I also wanted to bring up something that's sort of tangential to that, which is being careful about social media. And you definitely, your guests are posting photos of themselves, and usually that's great exposure, but you definitely want to make sure that you're enforcing the rules of the masking and social distancing, so that misinformation isn't getting out there. And then taking it a step further, we've actually turned down a couple blogger type visits and celebrity type visits over the course of the last few months, purely because we can't be responsible for them. We have no idea if that person is going to post a blog the day before that shows them out in Manhattan having a cocktail at a bar, and then the next day at Mountaintop. So you just have to really kind of be very parental at this point, and maybe give up on some things that you ordinarily would have killed for, and just and trust. We do have to. On the one hand, I'm saying trust people, but on the other hand, I'm saying by the horns and control people.
Well, Laura, we've been able to do, like you can do with some influencers, you can control them because they're staying with you and you're paying for them to be there.
Contract, yes.
I have a great PR firm that sets the rules and says, listen, this is what's going on. This is how you have to get there. And then when you're there, this is what they want you to do. And if you're an individual and you're out in the woods and you're outside the village of Woodstock, where you have to wear your mask everywhere. If you're up in the woods, up in the mountain, then a picture without a mask. But if you're standing on our property, don't even try it.
Right.
There's been a couple of questions coming through about how we're all planning and or forecasting for the summer ahead. And I know we touched a little bit on apprehension around staffing and fluctuations in volume of going from 15% occupancy up to 80 with potential event that's on the books, and how we'll all staff for that. We'll figure that out when we get there. But there is an active working group that is advising for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and trying to get the governor's ear in terms of recommended reopening. There were, as we may remember, 5 years ago, aka September, there was a multi-phase piece of reopening based on COVID levels and things like that. So those pieces have been written, and those recommendations are being made. We are very much eager to have that kind of information out there to at least say, if the trend heads in this direction, that we're able to start reopening. Personally, I know Basin Harbor is anticipating at least as open as we were last year with the 75 indoor, 150 outdoor, if not better. And so we're, as I said, over communicating with our guests about how do you whittle down your event list? Can you plan for plan A, B, and C, and then we'll figure it out when we get there? Or are you, just not comfortable with that uncertainty at this point? So we are all desperately trying to salvage that business that we have that is remaining, and we're also seeing it erode as the days go by and we get closer. May is months away, but it feels interminably, or that that it is so out of reach that we'll be able to be as open as we want to be at that time in order to facilitate business. So it is an unknown. We are actively looking at it with the Lodging Association. Heather, maybe you can chime in.
Yeah, I'll say something on that too. I mean, we are actually, I think the governor's gonna, take a little bit more time on that. And you're gonna see probably through the month of February and early March of some of the sentiment out there is that when I get to a certain amount of age and an age group that gets vaccinated or opportunity to do so. I know Heather knows a lot about this, but getting that timeline of or benchmarks at some point is going to be really helpful for a lot of us and our customers. Because I saw something pop up on that restrictions thing, and it's like, we don't know. We don't know enough yet. And but we're actively working on it. And hopefully we, as business partners with the state, we can get ourselves there. And I know the Wedding Association has done a great job of helping push out some stuff, as well as the Lake Champlain Chamber of Commerce. So there's a lot of action out there.
Yeah, I can just briefly chime in to say that, absolutely, we are having these conversations every day in terms of, how much can we, forecast and communicate so folks can plan, as well as exactly, what the summer is going to look like. And that goes both on travel restrictions as well as you mentioned, Courtney, what our event's going to look like. So I don't have the answers for you at this moment, but, all of the input and feedback is so appreciated, and the details about, what the implications are on the timing of that, and just the work that you guys are doing to help inform those discussions is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Cindy and Marie, I don't know if at this point you want to open it up to have people unmute themselves and ask any questions that you might have. I think most of us can stay on a little bit longer after 1 o'clock and keep having this conversation about the climate, the way things are, and what we're looking at for the year ahead as well. So, or are there any questions that we missed in the chat that we should?
I think you got most of the questions in general. And if not, please speak up, whoever asked them. It feels like it didn't get answered. And we'll just, we're opening it up to the floor right now if anybody's got questions. Or not.
Somebody in there, they asked about travel restrictions for guests that have been vaccinated. And maybe Heather or Courtney could answer that, but I think that's definitely a topic that's been out there. Staff and guests and the vaccination certificates and what that allows you to do. And maybe you guys can tie. I just saw that question in there.
This is me. This is Carrie Simmons. I'm the one that asked that from Sawyer Association, and we're just getting that question more and more. So Heather, for you, just like people are asking now for the summer and like starting that ramp up. And so I realize that a lot of this still is in the, unknown and planning process. But when you were saying like timing, I think sooner than later is ultimately what's been happening.
Yeah, the time sooner rather than later is heard loud and clear. As far as the vaccination question, that's, right now we know that we're in that rollout throughout the state about making sure that those of us that, in the population that are most vulnerable are vaccinated, and looking at, what the benchmarks may be as we get to, let's say, 65 and over. Right now there is no change in the policy for individuals who have been vaccinated. But again, that is part of the entirety of the conversation in terms of, what changes are coming.
Thanks, Carrie. Great question. I can just see your dining rooms are going to be filled with people over 65 this summer, and those of us that are still under that are not going to be able to go out to eat. Any other questions from the audience?
This is Kim at Seesaws. I have a quick question. Any tips on which recruitment websites you have success at?
We use a platform at Basin Harbor called CoolWorks, which is what a lot of national parks use to find people. And we find, because we're such a rural location, we don't have televisions, both for our staff and our guests. So if people don't enjoy being outdoors, they probably won't enjoy being here. And so we look for people that have that sense of adventure and will appreciate the assets that we can have as employee benefits as well, playing in the lake, trails, biking, all of that. So that has been very successful for us, and it's a very user-friendly platform as well for online applications and application review.
Thank you.
My name is Sibylle Kim. I have a question as a short-term rental host. We have a home that can sleep up to 10 people, and we have very clearly stuck to the single household mandate. But I'm sort of representing a group of other owners that are interested in multi-household gatherings. If they come from out of state, have been quarantining, are basically, instead of one household, two households, for example. Currently on the books, it still says single household occupancy only. So just wanting to know how long that will be still on the books.
I can answer that one as well, to say I can't tell you when that's going to change, but you are interpreting the rules correctly. I would just encourage folks to keep watching the governor's press conferences, especially on Tuesdays when, Commissioner Pieciak does the data analysis, because those are the measures that everybody's looking at in terms of, when we'll be able to make any adjustments into the current guidelines.
Yeah, Heather, I remember hearing him say he thought restaurants may be the first move he'll make as far as any restriction change. So it may be that trusted household piece again, or capacity.
Cindy, if I may, I have a question. This is Hans. I don't seem to be able to turn my video
we
on.
gotta go now, Sarah.
Because it says my host has stopped my video. So
That
That was me. Sorry, I just requested to start it back up again.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, everyone. Heather, thanks for being here as well. And I think the big question for me is, and for our industry is, what are the plans for marketing summer and fall for Vermont? And we know there's going to be more travel. I know we can't issue any public statements around it, but everything points in the direction that the higher vaccination rates, our rates going down, hospitalization rates going down, the vulnerable being covered. Last year, with having gatherings of 75 indoors and 150 outdoors, was when we knew a lot less than we know now. So I think we need to assume that this summer is going to be an opportunity for us to market Vermont again. And what's the plan that that your office has to do this. We have been, this lockdown state compared to other New England states. So we may need to put some extra effort into it to let people know that we are available and open. And this is not criticism, but I'm seriously asking what is the plan?
No, I appreciate the question, Hans. I mean, this is the opportunity for us to reestablish, the brand promise that Vermont has, and that our department is working very closely on what that looks like for the summer. I mean, the one benefit that we have from the CARES Act money that we received last year is that, we do have the rest of our normal budget to be able to put entirely into summer. That in addition to the ask that we have in front of the legislature right now for an additional $1 million. So that puts us better resource than we would have been in other years to be able to affect that brand awareness messaging, which is where we feel is our role right there at the top of the funnel. So it is absolutely our number one priority.
As a follow-up, when can we expect to see a plan from the department, what that will look like, that marketing for the summer?
We don't necessarily publish a marketing plan to the industry, but we do work very closely with the Travel Recreation Council, and this is something that we can certainly bring up with them if that's something that folks are interested in seeing.
I think it would be very helpful, because then as businesses, we can then tie into that. And also as, DMOs like, we have around the state, whether it's Hello Burlington, Stowe area, Killington. I mean, I think all those destinations would be really helped if they know what plan the state has, so that we can prepare our own marketing plans for our destinations as well as our own properties.
No, I appreciate that. And, we definitely understand that that's a desire that's out there, is how can we all align our efforts to the benefit of all? If this is something that folks are interested in, I mentioned we put out an industry newsletter yesterday. There was a question there in terms of, there's a blooper there about a survey that we just put out. And the whole idea of that is to give folks an opportunity to give some input into what our plans are going to be for the summer. That's not to say that we don't have plans, but it's just to say, like, we are more than happy to hear what others have on their mind. So anybody who, I put the newsletter in the chat, the sign up, you can go to the archives, I believe, to fill out that survey, to share your thoughts. Our ears are open.
Thank you.
I think a lot of us, or most of us, are operating under the assumption that by the summer we'll be reverting back to the guidelines that we had last summer, because people will be able to do things outdoors, dining, events, things like that. So I think that we're all feeling like that outdoor fresh air is a little bit of a help to us. But just as a marketer myself, if the restrictions haven't been lifted, and if it's still very difficult for people to travel to this state, it obviously doesn't make a lot of money, no sense to spend a lot of money marketing to them. It's just falling on deaf ears. So I'm wondering how, maybe it's through VLA, how the state can keep a pulse on how the resort industry is doing. Are they meeting the occupancy levels that we're allowed to sell to? How is that working? And is it worth spending the money? No different than an online campaign, just sort of treating a real life campaign with that occupancy data. I don't know if that made a lot of sense, but.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the same uncertainty that you folks are in terms of, when do we pull that trigger? Exactly what is that messaging? What can we stand behind given what the restrictions are? So, that level of uncertainty is no different than for us than for you folks. But, I definitely am advocating for this should be a shared approach. It's going to take all of us for the industry and the state to recover. So I just would, the more that we can be working together on this, to all of our benefit.
Can I mention that it's Bill Orleans from PP&D. We handle the 1-800 Vermont calls that come into Vermont, and those calls are still coming, and we're still mailing out hundreds of packets. So even though we're not promoting it, people still want to come to Vermont, and we all should be very aware of that. And there's just lots and lots of calls and lots of packets still going out every day.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that. We are open. We're not closed. there's many ways to come here and be here and come here safely. That messaging, even for your own businesses for that matter, regardless of what the state's efforts would be or when they pull the trigger, is keeping your brand out there and keeping the Vermont brand out there. We can't, we're like a major corporation in Vermont. We cannot give up on our brand, and we got to keep it out there. The one thing we may have, at the Woodstock Inn Resort, we may have saved money or try to, lower costs in so many different areas. One place we did not do that with was marketing, and we just shifted how we did it. It wasn't really specific promotional marketing. It was more brand marketing and keeping us out there so people know, because right now you have the largest audience there ever has been online, and people are working at home. What happens when people work at home as opposed to in the office with somebody behind their shoulders? They're online a lot more, shopping around, looking at things and dreaming about places to go and stay. So we have huge opportunities, all of us right now. So that if I add that, Sarah, to the whole scheme of what we've been talking about, that's really important.
That's great.
It's all about the message.
All right. I am going to call a wrap on it. Thanks to all of our panelists for your help with this. It was really a great conversation. Thanks to everybody who attended and those of you who asked questions. I hope we got to all of those. If not, feel free to reach out directly to people. I'm sure they'd be glad to answer. We'll post this video to the Vermont Tourism Summit website probably later this week. So if there's others on your staff that you want to see this, just point them in that direction. There'll be more of these coming up. The board suggested one on attractions, maybe one on retail restaurants, makers. So send us your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you on what you'd like to see. Again, thank you all. Thanks, Heather, for sponsoring. And
Thanks,
anybody who wants to stay on to just chit chat, that's great. We'd love to have you hang out. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Cindy. I'll see you soon enough.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Yep.
Hey, Bill.
Bill, I like your backdrop.
You want to
Very
see
purple.
You want to see what looks behind the backdrop? No, you do not want to see what looks behind the backdrop.
Hey, Hans, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Cindy. Thanks, and welcome aboard with VLA, our administrator.
I guess,
you.
yeah, it's been interesting, just learning the nuances, and yeah, that's a conversation over a cocktail. I'll come see you one of these days.
When we can have more than one household again.
Yeah, right. Thank you though very much for the referral. I appreciate it. So, how do we get everybody's picture seen?
I need to click it on.
I know.
Yeah.
You go up to the top right corner where it says view, you can select gallery instead of speaker.
Oh yeah.
And people have to select if they want to turn their video on or not.
I thought it was still spotlighting, Marie. Thank you.
I turn that off.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Heather, while you're here, there's been a number of surveys that have come out recently with results where somehow they weren't circulated. Like the DLC just had one that was like 30 plus questions long. And there's been a lot of question on like who they're actually surveying or like where this information is coming from. And I don't know if that's something that, that sort of shared, that if it gets to more people and sharing of ideas and sharing of requests for information and or trying to control the outcome of a survey by only sending it to certain people. But
yeah, the DLC survey, I don't have a lot of information on, to be honest. And so I can't really speak on what, I shouldn't say strategy, but what the intent there in terms of what they were trying to get out of that. But I can try and track it down in terms of what the results were to see.
Yeah, I got a printout of the results of it, but I guess I'm just concerned that if the state is looking for information on different topics, like how do we say like these are, there's the one going around about how people are either complying with or traveling during COVID. That
Right.
one has been live that I've seen and participated in, but just wanting to make sure that these are getting out to people. And I know so many emails with links of resources these days, and things can get lost, but also wanting to make sure that we're actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the one about, visitors traveling, the COVID survey that UVM's doing. If folks I don't know if anyone left on this call has seen that or not, but, they definitely did come to us to make sure that we promoted it on our channels, and we did that when it first came out. But, it's a good reminder that we could do it again, in the sense that, I wanted to make sure that their intent was to see what the differences might be between in-state and out-of-state residents, and certainly to have a decent sample size, we need to make sure that we're actually, getting it out to the right number of folks. So, and that, as far as I understand, those results will not be shared until the end of March. That's quite a long survey. So we're gonna have to wait on that, but.
And Sarah, on the DLC piece, you're not alone in being a license holder that didn't receive the survey. We had a VTIR leadership meeting on Monday, and not a single person on that council received it. And one of those individuals has 5 licenses. So
we have 13. So
there's a gap in how it was distributed. And I believe the Committee of Jurisdiction has a couple of questions that they're going to ask when DLL comes in for their presentation.
We got it. I was afraid we'd done something wrong.
Hi, Heather. I was curious, where's the buy local campaign at? Is there anything new there?
There's another proposal at the legislature right now to continue a buy local campaign with $1 million investment. So that's where it is right now. We will continue to, just as it came up on this call, promoting Vermont to Vermonters is certainly something that we can do, as well as promoting out of state. And so we will continue to do so. But in terms of consumer stimulus, that is not funded at the moment, but there is an active proposal.
Okay.
Anyone working with the rest stops and welcome centers to try to get them to handle a little more, be more open and have more material? It seems there's such a limited amount of what they're allowing to go to the rest stops right now. It's kind of a shame for some of the local publications can't even get into the local rest stop. So I don't know how that can be pushed or promoted. I mean, disclosure, I get paid for distributing it, but I get paid either way. So I'm actually asking for more work, but it just seems a shame that you can be in Southern Vermont and there aren't any Southern Vermont publications being allowed to be distributed. We've got pallets sitting in a warehouse somewhere. And I understand that they're limiting things for many reasons, but I also know all around the rest of the country, rest stops and welcome centers are open everywhere. So
that's a question that I can ask Bill. I have not heard the latest on, BGS's operational strategy there, but I can certainly.
They're talking May 1, but it seems like you could get something out. May 1's not a magic day. There are some big publications and maps that would be nice to give out.
Heather, I heard mention of the gift certificate program the other day. Is that still going, and can it not?
Well, if there are folks out there that still have, if they signed up for that, last September, they can still use those. As folks remember, the businesses receive the money up front. So the proposal that's in front of the legislature right now does not specify that it would be that again. It's just understanding that, there's more than one strategy that we can, advocate for to help in our recovery. So.
Heather, I am sorry I was sort of being direct with you on the marketing, but just, I know you're a partner with us, and do you think what we are asking for as an industry from the governor is clear, or what can we do to provide more information to give direction, some forward direction on group travel for the summer, gathering sizes? We've got, you've heard it, but we've had Brights calling and canceling, and meeting planners. We know it's going to be better. We all know it. And there's optimism in the governor's voice, and Dr. Levine was even optimistic. Why can't we make a statement? What's missing? What can we do? Well, how can we communicate this better so that message will come across, the importance of it, and that it will actually, that we on this Friday, we can hear from the governor saying, you know what, we're optimistic about summer. And if we meet these metrics, vaccination rate is X, R rate is Y, hospitalization rate is Z, then we will go back to allowing group sizes of X and by as soon as possible, you know, and we don't need an exact date, but at least give us something that we can give to our customers that says, you know, we feel pretty good about you holding your event this summer. Just stand by.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. The meeting I was in before this one was about this very topic, about, you know, the communication strategy in terms of what this summer is going to look like. I think that the industry has been effective in making it very clear what is at stake. All I can say is that until we see a greater rate of vaccination, until that we can, say that we have reduced the risk to that vulnerable population, I don't know, when we're going to get that messaging, but, there are small signs that we're seeing, and I know this is not nearly enough, but, the fact that we've seen these changes in school sports, we expect additional, like, small little changes, like, because we've seen this data, we're able to make these differences. That is all leading in the same direction, and I can't, disclose other things that are coming, but all I can say is that it's not that the issues are not known. It's just that what is that data metric? What can we point to that the entire, governor's team is comfortable with? That's just the reality of it.
And okay, yeah, I can appreciate it, but
these are discussions where there are people on both sides that are very passionate about the part of that they see. And so that is our job, to continue to have those very difficult discussions, knowing where we all want to get to.
We need help
the
drawing.
problem is that we don't, if we don't do this, there's going to be not enough money in this state to compensate our businesses.
I don't disagree with you.
And we cannot go on like this. There's got to be more direction. This is just, it's almost, we have a badge of honor that we're doing so well in this state, and it's great. But we have proven we can operate our businesses safely. We did it last summer. There was one wedding where there was an outbreak, and hotels have operated safely. I know there's a lot of unknowns, but what we do know is what the vaccination rate is. We know it. It's going to go up and up and up. It's science. And it's science that if you vaccinate more, you'll get fewer cases, fewer hospitalizations at least, and fewer deaths. So why can't we apply that science, put it in a metric and say, this is the metric we're heading towards? And we talk with Mike Pichek a lot, and he's very smart. He's graphed it out. He knows he showed us the graphs. Why not attach a statement to that graph that says, look here, March 31 or April 30, or it looks like that's the time we can do groups again. Don't hold me to it, because if something changes, but if the science continues and the way we see it, we can open up. And we've asked for a meeting with the governor to discuss this, and we're still waiting to hear from him for a time. But we're going to have that hard discussion that we had last year, where we have to sit down with him and say, we understand, but if you don't do this, we're going to be knocking on your door for more money, because we can't survive this way. Let us operate our business and survive, and let us do it safely. Give us some direction. And if he wants us to write a paper that would sort of outline what that would look like, we'll be very happy to do that. We can do a position paper that says, if you can't, here's a suggested pathway, and give us feedback on it, or let us know if that pathway could work. But this is science. This is not, there's a lot more data available now than we had last year, and we have a vaccine. We're talking about summer. We're talking about 4 months away.
Again, I don't disagree with you, and I would just say I hope you can continue to trust the team that's working on this, that they want to get to the same place that you do.
Oh, listen, it's not about trust. It's about communicating. And I think I rest my case.
So, we manage meetings all over the country, and we're facing this same challenge everywhere. Like, it's hard to get data. It's hard for states to let us know, we think we'll be comfortable hosting a group half your size by this date. Like, we can't get it. So it's been tough. And I made a comment earlier, we've got some clients that want to do a hybrid this summer, and they only want me to look at red states because we have a better chance of allowing that to happen than in a blue state. So I'm just kind of conveying what our world is like too, with meetings and groups.
We have, Cindy, we have weddings canceling from member properties every day, moving to New Hampshire. Not postponing them anymore because they postponed them from last year. They're now moving to New Hampshire because all 6 New England states are allowed to travel to New Hampshire.
In one 30-day period, I know this number is scalable to the larger properties, but in one 30-day period, we lost $392,000 worth of future revenue because we're not able to connect those dots from, look, we're able to do schools interscholastic sports, or we're going to open schools, to you can have a wedding, or you can hold your conference or your corporate event. And if you multiply that exponentially to just the larger properties in 30 days, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars that have been lost.
But the essential problem is that our industry is the one industry that's constantly being held back. It's the one industry that is the most affected, and that's the most shut down. And why is that? We have safety precautions in place. There are no cases traced back to hotel stays. So we know that, and the governor says it himself, 70–80% of the cases are community transmissions. These are not people traveling to Vermont. All we're asking for, by this summer, can we at least message now to say, there's a good chance your wedding can happen here?
Because what's going to happen is
metrics are met.
You're going
What
to
is so
tell us,
difficult about that?
the state's going to tell us you can open on May 1st. They're going to say, congratulations, you can have events. And what's going to happen is that's at least a 90-day lead time to the time that we're going to get to the point where events have stopped canceling. So at this point, April is gone, May is gone, June is gone for me, July is gone for me. The first time that I have a major event left on the books is August. And the more resources that the family has for a wedding, the faster they are to pull it, to put those resources in a different property, in a different state. So from the time they say go, it's still going to be at least another 90 days before we're going to realize the impact of them opening our sector.
So I'm going to try to wrap this up a little bit. We really wanted this panel to be more about sort of the positive changes and impact, kind of looking at the silver lining. And I know this is your chance to talk to Heather, but I think you can all do that separately. And I appreciate the feedback. It's a great point. I think all of us in the industry are struggling, but I also appreciate what the state's done to make it a very safe place for people to live and for people to visit. So I think with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks everyone for your feedback. And hopefully we'll see you next time. Different topic, but probably the same group. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.